Commander Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the Stellar Hawk, her calloused fingers drumming against the smooth metal console. 20 years of deep space exploration hadn't prepared her for what her sensors were showing, an organic signature unlike anything in the Federation database, pulsing weakly from within a derelict ship. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the flutter of anticipation in her chest. "Life support failing on the target vessel," reported her AI companion, Atlas. "Signature is fading. Estimated 30 minutes until complete failure." Sarah had seen enough death in her career. She wasn't about to let another life slip away, even if it meant breaking half a dozen protocols. "Plot intercept course. Prep the medical bay." The Stellar Hawk glided through the debris field, its advanced shielding deflecting the countless fragments of what appeared to be an ancient battle. The derelict ship hung suspended in space, its hull bearing strange markings that seemed to shift and change as she watched. "Atmospheric analysis complete," Atlas announced. "Breathable mixture, but contamination levels require filtration masks." Sarah secured her gear and checked her plasma pistol, standard procedure, even for rescue operations. "Keep the engines hot, Atlas. If anything feels wrong, you get us out of here." The docking procedure was tricky, but Sarah had handled worse. The magnetic clamps engaged with a dull thud that reverberated through both vessels. As the airlock cycled, she activated her suit's external lights and stepped into the unknown. The derelict's corridors were a maze of organic curves and crystalline formations, nothing like the utilitarian designs of human or known alien vessels. The air was thick with suspended particles that sparkled in her light beam, creating halos of iridescent color. Following the life sign readings on her wrist display, Sarah made her way deeper into the ship. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint bioluminescence, responding to her presence. She passed several chambers filled with shattered equipment and strange artifacts, but it was the writing on the walls that caught her attention, symbols that appeared to be mathematical equations of impossible complexity. "Atlas, are you recording this?" "Affirmative, Commander. Analyzing data in real time. These equations appear to describe. I apologize, but much of this exceeds my theoretical framework." The life sign grew stronger as she approached what appeared to be the ship's core. The chamber she entered was dominated by a crystalline structure, and within it, suspended in a field of shifting energy, was a child. Or at least something that resembled a child. The being couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall, with skin that rippled like the surface of an opal. Its features were delicate, almost human, but there was an otherworldly grace to its unconscious form. What truly caught Sarah's attention were the patterns of light that danced beneath its skin, forming complex geometric shapes that matched the equations on the walls. "Atlas, vitals. Stable but weakening. The stasis field is failing. Commander, this being's neural patterns are off the charts. I'm detecting quantum fluctuations I cannot explain." Sarah approached the crystal chamber, her hand hovering over the control interface. This was the moment of decision. She could follow protocol, call it in, wait for the science team, and watch another life fade away. Or she could do what she'd always done, trust her instincts. "Atlas, help me interface with these controls. We're bringing our guest home." The next few minutes were a blur of careful calculations and precise movements. The stasis field dissolved gradually, and Sarah caught the child as it fell forward. Despite its alien appearance, it felt fragile and real in her arms, its skin cool to the touch. As she turned to leave, the ship's systems began to fail catastrophically. The bioluminescence flickered and died, and the crystal structures started to crack. "Commander, the ship's power core is destabilizing. Immediate evacuation required." Sarah ran, cradling her precious cargo. The corridor behind her began to collapse, the organic walls crumbling into dust. She reached the airlock just as the derelict's superstructure gave way. Diving through its Atlas remotely sealed the doors. Safe aboard the Stellar Hawk, Sarah laid the child on a medical bed. As the ship's systems began their analysis, The child's eyes fluttered open. There were pools of swirling silver, and within them, Sarah saw the same impossible equations that had covered the walls of the dying ship. "Hello, little one," she whispered, her voice gentle despite her racing heart. "You're safe now." The child's response wasn't in words, but in patterns of light that danced across its skin, forming shapes that seemed to reach out toward her. In that moment, Sarah Chen knew her life would never be the same. She had become something more than an explorer or a commander. She had become a guardian. As the Stellar Hawk accelerated away from the derelict ship's final moments, Sarah watched the medical readings with growing amazement. This child wasn't just a survivor. It was a miracle of science and nature combined. And somewhere out there, something or someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to protect it. Atlas, set course for deep space, and delete all records of this encounter from the ship's logs. Commander, that violates at least 7 regulations. Sarah smiled, her eyes never leaving the sleeping child. Sometimes, Atlas, doing the right thing means breaking all the rules. The stars stretched into streaks of light as the Stellar Hawk jumped to FTL, carrying its crew and its extraordinary passenger toward an uncertain future. Sarah Chen, veteran of 1,000 missions, felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever forces had led to this moment, she would protect this child with everything she had. The universe, it seemed, had much bigger plans for them both. Atlas's warning came at 300 ship time. "Commander, the child's neural patterns are spiking again." Sarah Chen was already moving, having barely slept since their escape 3 days ago. The Stellar Hawk's medical bay had become a sanctuary of sorts, its walls now covered with holographic displays monitoring their unique passenger. The child, whom Sarah had begun calling Nova for the star-like patterns that danced beneath its skin, was hovering 3 feet above the medical bed. The air around it rippled with quantum distortions that made Sarah's teeth ache. "Easy there, little one," she said softly, approaching with practiced calm. "You're safe. Remember our breathing exercises." The floating child turned toward her voice, those silver eyes focusing with frightening intensity. The patterns beneath its skin pulsed faster, forming complex fractals that seemed to reach out into the air itself. "Commander," Atlas interjected, "the quantum fluctuations are approaching critical levels. Recommend immediate sedation protocols." Sarah ignored the A's suggestion. Sedatives had proven ineffective anyway, seeming to slide right through Nova's unusual physiology. Instead, she did what had worked before. She began to hum. It was an old Earth lullaby, one her grandmother had sung to her as a child. The simple melody carried memories of warmth and safety, and somehow, Nova seemed to sense this. The fractals in the air began to slow their dance, matching the rhythm of her song. Gradually, Nova descended back to the bed, those impossible eyes never leaving Sarah's face. The commander kept humming, moving closer until she could reach out and take the child's hand. The skin felt like silk over steel, warm now where it had been cool days ago. "There we go," Sarah whispered as the last of the quantum distortions faded. "Better." Nova's response came not in words, but in a cascade of light patterns that Sarah was slowly learning to interpret. Confusion, fear, but also trust. The patterns always showed trust when they looked at her. "Atlas, log this episode with the others. Any new insights?" "Affirmative, Commander. The quantum events are becoming more controlled, less chaotic. The child appears to be adapting. However, I must note that the energy readings continue to exceed known physical limitations." Sarah had stopped questioning the impossible days ago. Every test they ran on Nova revealed new mysteries. The child's DNA, if it could even be called that, appeared to be constantly rewriting itself. Its cellular structure incorporated elements that shouldn't exist in this universe. And then there were the equations. They appeared everywhere Nova went, complex mathematical formulas that described reality itself, manifesting in light patterns on walls, in the air, even in Sarah's dreams. She'd been a top student at the academy, but these equations made advanced quantum mechanics look like simple addition. "Show me the latest analysis," she requested, settling into the chair beside Nova's bed. The child had begun its usual post-episode routine, tracing patterns in the air with delicate fingers. Atlas projected a holographic display filled with data streams and neural maps. The child's brain activity suggests a form of consciousness that operates on multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Furthermore, the genetic restructuring appears to be accelerating. "Commander, it's evolving." Sarah watched as Nova created a perfect replica of the stellar hawk in floating light, complete with working internal systems. "No, Atlas, it's not just evolving, it's teaching itself." A soft chime interrupted her thoughts, the ship's proximity alert. Sarah was on her feet instantly, maternal instincts she didn't know she possessed screaming danger. "Multiple vessels detected at extreme range," Atlas reported. "Configuration unknown. They appear to be running dark." Sarah's mind raced. They were in unclaimed space, far from any regular patrol routes. The only reason for ships to run dark out here was if they didn't want to be found. How many? 3 confirmed signatures. Their course suggests they are actively searching this sector. Nova had stopped playing with the light patterns, those silver eyes now fixed on the ceiling, as if tracking the distant ships through the hull itself. "They're looking for you, aren't they?" Sarah asked softly, though she already knew the answer. The patterns that rippled across Nova's skin spoke of recognition and fear. Making her decision, Sarah scooped up the child, who weighed almost nothing despite its dense cellular structure. "Atlas, initiate Protocol Phantom. Full-spectrum camouflage, minimal power signatures. Plot a course through the Karinsky Nebula." "Commander, the radiation levels in the nebula will mask our presence better than any stealth system. Execute now." As the Stellar Hawk began its careful maneuvers, Sarah carried Nova to the ship's observation deck. The child needed to see this, to understand. "Look," she said, positioning them before the massive viewport. "See how the stars move. We're going to hide in there." She pointed to the distant purple-green clouds of the nebula. "Those people looking for you, they won't find us, I promise." Nova's response was unexpected. The child reached out, not toward the viewport, but toward the ship's navigation controls. Patterns of light flowed from its fingers, interfacing with the ship's systems in ways that should have been impossible. "Atlas, what's happening?" "The child is improving our stealth systems, Commander. The algorithms are being rewritten on a quantum level. Our power signature is now completely masked." Sarah watched in amazement as Nova continued its work, those delicate fingers dancing through the air like a conductor leading an invisible orchestra. The patterns of light grew more complex, weaving themselves into the ship's very structure. "They are not simply searching," Nova communicated through a new pattern of lights, the first direct message they had received. "They are hunting. All of existence depends on what I will become." The words hung in the air, written in light and quantum possibilities. Sarah felt the weight of them settle onto her shoulders, a responsibility greater than any she had ever known. "Then we'll make sure you have the time to become whatever you need to be," she promised, drawing the child close. "But first, you need to tell me everything. Who are you, really? What were those equations in the derelict ship? Why are they hunting you?" Nova's response came in waves of light and mathematical proofs that stretched Sarah's understanding to its limits. The child was a seed, it seemed to say, planted by beings who had seen the end of all things. A chance to change what was coming, hidden away in the form of a child who could rewrite the laws of reality itself. As the Stellar Hawk slipped into the protective embrace of the nebula, Sarah Chen realized she was no longer just hiding a rescued child. She was protecting the universe's last, best hope for survival. "Atlas," she commanded, her voice firm with resolve, "begin recording. Project designation, Guardian. Priority level, Alpha Black. We're going to need every advantage we can get." Nova's patterns swirled in agreement, and for a moment, the observation deck was filled with equations that described not just what was, but what could be. The hunt had begun, but Sarah Chen had spent her life preparing for moments like this, even as she hadn't known it. They had a nebula to hide in, a ship that could now bend reality itself, and most importantly, they had each other. Whatever was coming, whatever forces were hunting them, they would face it together. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what this unlikely pair, a human commander and a child of quantum possibilities, would do next. The Karinsky Nebula was a graveyard of broken ships and lost dreams, its swirling gases hiding centuries of failed expeditions. For Sarah Chen and Nova, it had been home for the past 2 weeks. Energy spike at bearing 340, Atlas reported, its usual calm voice carrying an edge of urgency. Signature matches the hunting vessels. Sarah's hands flew across the control panel, adjusting their position within a particularly dense cloud of ionized gas. Nova sat cross-legged in a modified acceleration chair, silver eyes closed in concentration as patterns of light rippled across its skin. They're using quantum resonance scanning, Nova communicated through a complex series of mathematical equations that floated in the air, looking for traces of my genetic signature. The child had grown stronger over their time in hiding. What had started as simple light patterns had evolved into a sophisticated form of communication, mixing mathematics, quantum physics, and pure energy in ways that defied conventional understanding. Atlas, status of the quantum camouflage. Operating at 98% efficiency, Commander. Nova's modifications continue to exceed theoretical limitations. However, the hunters appear to be using technology based on similar principles. Sarah watched as 3 dark shapes emerged from the nebula's shifting clouds. The vessels were unlike anything she'd seen before. Their hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating void-like silhouettes against the nebula's glow. "They're getting closer," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "Nova, time to test that theory of yours." The child nodded, its entire body beginning to glow with internal light. They had discovered, quite by accident, that Nova could extend its quantum manipulation abilities beyond its own body. The theory was simple. If they couldn't hide from the hunter's quantum scans, they would give them too much to scan. Atlas, initiate protocol echoes. The AI complied, and around the stellar hawk, dozens of quantum signatures began to bloom. Each one was a perfect copy of Nova's energy pattern, scattered throughout the nebula like seeds in the wind. It was a gamble. They had never tried this at such a scale before. Nova's face showed the strain, sweat beading on its opalescent skin as it maintained the quantum duplicates. Sarah wanted to comfort the child, but she knew they couldn't afford any distractions. The hunters were too close. "Multiple targeting systems have locked onto the quantum signatures," Atlas reported. "The hunting vessels are splitting up to investigate." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The plan was working, but they weren't safe yet. She had learned long ago that the most dangerous moment in any evasion was when you thought you had succeeded. Nova's eyes suddenly snapped open, silver erasers blazing with internal light. "They're not just scanning," the child projected urgently. "They're unmaking." Before Sarah could ask what that meant, she saw it. Where the hunting vessel's beams touched the nebula gases, reality itself seemed to unravel. Matter didn't just disappear. It ceased to have ever existed. "Atlas, full power to engines. Get us out of here." The Stellar Hawk responded instantly, its enhanced systems pushing it to speeds that should have torn it apart. Behind them, entire sections of the nebula were being erased from existence. "Commander," Atlas's voice was tight with artificial concern. "They're using some form of targeted entropy acceleration. The laws of physics are breaking down in their wake." Sarah's mind raced. They couldn't outrun ships that could unmake reality itself. They needed something else, something unexpected. Her eyes fell on Nova, who was watching the pursuit with an expression that mixed fear and curiosity. "Nova," she said, An idea forming? Those equations from your ship, the ones that covered the walls, they weren't just mathematics, were they? They were instructions. The child's response came in a burst of complex patterns that Sarah had learned to read as excitement. Yes, instructions for rewriting local space-time parameters. But the power required. "We have power," Sarah interrupted, gesturing to the hunting vessels. "They're pumping enough energy into their weapons to unmake reality. What if we could use that against them?" Nova's eyes widened in understanding. The patterns beneath its skin began to shift and swirl with increasing complexity. "Atlas, bring us about, full stop. Commander, that course of action is the only option we have. Nova, show them what you can really do." The child stood, its small form radiating power that made the air itself crackle with potential. The hunting vessels, perhaps sensing their prey had stopped running, began to close in. What happened next defied description. Nova reached out with both hands, and the equations that had covered its parent ship appeared in the space around the stellar hawk. But this time, they weren't static. They moved, flowed, and began to rewrite the very fabric of space around them. The hunters fired their entropy weapons, but where they struck Nova's equations, something extraordinary happened. The unmaking effect was caught, redirected, and transformed. Reality didn't unravel, it reformed. "They're using seventh-dimensional physics," Nova projected, its mental voice strained but excited. "But they don't understand the full spectrum. Watch." The space between the ships began to fold in impossible ways. The hunters' weapons, designed to unmake reality, instead became the power source for Nova's equations. Each burst of entropy was caught in a web of mathematical truth, transformed, and used to create something new. Sarah watched in awe as a spherical pocket of altered space-time formed around them. Inside it, the normal laws of physics still applied. Outside, where the hunters floated in confusion, reality had become a fluid thing, responding to Nova's will rather than natural law. "Commander," Atlas reported with what sounded like actual amazement, "the hunters' weapons are being reflected back at them, but changed. They're not unmaking reality anymore. They're remaking it," Sarah finished, understanding dawning. "Nova isn't just hiding from them, it's showing them what they've been doing wrong." The hunting vessels tried to retreat, but it was too late. Their own weapons, transformed by Nova's equations, had created a cascade effect. Where they had sought to unmake, now they could only watch as reality remade itself around them, trapping them in a pocket of space-time that operated on rules they couldn't comprehend. Nova lowered its hands, swaying slightly with exhaustion. Sarah caught the child, cradling it gently as the light patterns across its skin slowly stabilized. "They're not destroyed," Nova projected weakly. "Just contained. They need to learn, to understand. Unmaking is easy. Creation is a harder path." Sarah looked at the sphere of altered space where the hunters now floated, trapped in a lesson about the nature of reality itself. How long will they be in there? Until they understand. Days, years, time is different there now. As the stellar hawk moved away from the scene of their impossible victory, Sarah Chen realized that she was no longer just protecting a child. She was helping to guide a being that could reshape the universe itself, one that chose to teach rather than destroy, even in the face of those who sought to unmake it. "Atlas," she said softly, still holding the now sleeping Nova, "set course for the outer rim, and update Project Guardian's parameters. We're not just hiding anymore, we're preparing." The AI acknowledged the command as the ship slipped into FTL, leaving behind 3 vessels trapped in a sphere of enlightenment, forced to contemplate the difference between unmaking and creation until they finally understood the lesson Nova had tried to teach them. The hunt wasn't over, Sarah knew. There would be others, but now they had something they didn't have before, proof that Nova's power could be used for more than just survival. It could be used to change minds, to teach, to transform. The universe had plans for them all, it seemed, and Sarah Chen was beginning to understand just how profound those plans might be. The outer rim trading post of Haven Station was a maze of shadowy corridors and forgotten secrets. Perfect, Sarah thought, for hiding a child who could bend reality. Less perfect for getting answers, but they were running out of options. "Are you sure about this contact?" she asked Atlas through her neural link, her hand resting protectively on Nova's shoulder. The child had adopted a human appearance for their venture into public spaces, a simple trick of quantum manipulation that made its opalescent skin and silver eyes appear ordinary. Dr. Isabella Martinez was the Federation's leading xenoarchaeologist before she disappeared 15 years ago, Atlas responded. Her last published work theorized the existence of a civilization that existed outside conventional space-time. They found Martinez in a cluttered workshop deep in Haven's maintenance levels. The woman's dark hair was streaked with gray, her eyes sharp behind ancient prescription lenses, a deliberate anachronism in an age of perfect medical vision. "Commander Chen," Martinez said without looking up from her workbench, "I wondered when someone would finally bring me a quantum child." Sarah's hand tightened on Nova's shoulder. "How did you?" "No," Martinez finished, finally turning to face them, "because I've spent my life studying the warnings they left behind. The architects, as I called them in my papers, though I suspect they had a different name for themselves." Nova's human disguise flickered for a moment, its true form showing through as patterns of light danced across its skin. Martinez showed no surprise, only deep fascination. "The equations," Sarah said, understanding dawning. "The ones on Nova's ship, you've seen them before." Martinez nodded, moving to a wall covered in holographic displays. With a gesture, she brought up images that made Sarah's breath catch: cave paintings, ancient tablets, crystalline structures buried in the cores of dead worlds, all showing the same mathematical patterns that Nova produced. "They knew it was coming," Martinez explained, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The heat death of not just our universe, but all universes. The grand entropy that would eventually unmake everything that ever was or could be. So they planned. They seeded the multiverse with children like yours, each one carrying the potential to rewrite the fundamental laws of reality itself." Nova moved forward, its disguise falling away completely as it studied the images. The patterns beneath its skin began to align with the ancient equations, completing sequences that had been incomplete for millennia. "But the hunters," Sarah began, "are the ones who refused to accept the architect's solution," Martinez finished. "They believe that unmaking reality is the only way to save it, that by accelerating the heat death, they can trigger a new beginning. They hunt the quantum children because each one represents a different possibility, a different way to save existence itself." Sarah watched as Nova traced the equations on the wall, adding to them, changing them. "They're wrong," she said firmly. "Nova showed us. Creation is harder than destruction, but it's the only way forward." Martinez's eyes gleamed. "Yes, but creation requires understanding. The hunters lack that. They see only the end, not the infinite possibilities between now and then." She turned to Nova, who was still absorbed in the equations. "Show me what you've learned, little one." The workshop filled with light as Nova projected its knowledge, not just equations now, but entire landscapes of mathematical truth. Sarah saw universes born and die, possibilities branching out like trees of light, each one carrying the seed of salvation within it. "Extraordinary," Martinez breathed. "The architects didn't just give you the power to change reality, they gave you the wisdom to know how." Nova's projection shifted, showing the hunters' ships trapped in their sphere of altered space-time. "They can learn," the child communicated. "All can learn." "That's why you're here," Martinez said, turning to Sarah. "You need to understand what you're protecting. It's not just a child. It's a template for a new kind of existence, one that can survive the heat death by constantly remaking itself. But for that to work, Nova needs to reach full maturity," Sarah finished. "How long?" Martinez shook her head. "Time is, Complicated for beings like Nova. Could be days, could be centuries. But the hunters aren't your only problem anymore. She activated another display, showing news reports from across the galaxy. Strange phenomena, reality distortions, entire systems experiencing temporal fluctuations. Other quantum children, Sarah realized. They're awakening. Yes, and not all of them have guardians like you, Commander. Some are scared, lashing out. Others are being manipulated by forces that don't understand what they're dealing with. The universe is changing faster than anyone realized. Nova's projections suddenly shifted, showing a pattern that made Martinez gasp. That's impossible, the scientist whispered. That's the master equation, the architect's final theorem. No single quantum child should be able to comprehend it yet. But Nova wasn't just comprehending it, it was completing it. The equation grew, evolved, became something new and terrible and beautiful all at once. They're coming, Nova projected, its mental voice urgent. Not just hunters now. The void makers. The ones who taught them how to unmake reality. They sense the awakening. Sarah's combat instincts kicked in. How long do we have? Time is subjective, Nova replied, its patterns growing more complex. But in your terms, days. They will unmake everything to stop us from reaching maturity. All of us, every quantum child in every universe. Martinez was already moving, grabbing data crystals and ancient artifacts. You need to get to the others, she said urgently. The awakening quantum children. Unite them. Teach them what Nova has learned. It's the only way. Sarah looked at Nova, seeing not just the child she had sworn to protect, but the future of all existence. Atlas, prep the ship. Dr. Martinez, thank you. Don't thank me yet, Commander, Martinez said grimly. The real war is just beginning. Reality itself is at stake, and the universe chose you as its general. As they hurried back to the Stellar Hawk, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. They needed allies, resources, a plan. But most of all, they needed time. Time for Nova to teach its siblings. Time for the quantum children to reach their full potential. The hunters had been bad enough, but void makers, beings that had mastered the art of unmaking reality itself, that was a threat beyond anything she had trained for. We'll find a way, she promised Nova as they boarded the ship. We'll protect you, all of you. Nova's response came in a pattern she had never seen before, a combination of quantum mathematics and pure emotion that spoke of trust, love, and absolute certainty. Together, the child projected, we will rewrite the stars themselves. The Stellar Hawk lifted off from Haven Station, carrying its precious cargo toward a future that would either see reality itself unmade or remade anew. Sarah Chen, once a simple deep space commander, now the guardian of existence's last hope, set her course for the nearest quantum disturbance. They had quantum children to find, an army of reality's children to unite, and precious little time to prepare for the coming of the Void Makers. The true battle for everything that was, is, or could be, was about to begin. The Stellar Hawk emerged from FTL above a world of perpetual twilight. Below them, an entire continent pulsed with quantum distortions, reality rippling like water in a storm. Second signature confirmed, Atlas announced. Another quantum child, but the patterns are chaotic. Sarah watched as Nova pressed its hand against the viewport, its skin illuminating with responsive patterns. They had been tracking quantum disturbances for 3 days, following the trail of awakening siblings. This was their third find, and potentially their most dangerous. She's afraid, Nova projected, the mathematical equations that formed its thoughts tinged with sadness. So afraid she's tearing reality apart without realizing it. The planet below was proof of that fear. Gravity shifted randomly, time flowed at different speeds in different regions, and the very air seemed to phase between states of matter. At the center of it all, they detected a single life form with a quantum signature matching Nova's. Atlas, can we establish safe landing coordinates? Negative, Commander. Local spacetime is too unstable for conventional landing procedures. Sarah turned to Nova, who was already shedding its human disguise. Ready for this? The child nodded, its form beginning to glow with internal light. They had developed this procedure with the first two quantum children they found, using Nova's more developed abilities to stabilize the chaos of its awakening siblings. Remember, Sarah said softly, just like we practiced. Find her center, show her the way, teach her to create rather than destroy. Nova's response was a complex equation that approximated a smile. Then it began. The space around the stellar hawk warped as Nova extended its consciousness toward the planet. Sarah watched through the ship's sensors as a corridor of stable spacetime formed, cutting through the chaos below like a path of light through darkness. Path stabilized, Atlas reported. But Commander, the Voidmaker's signal is getting stronger. Estimate 6 hours until they reach this sector. Sarah gritted her teeth. 6 hours to find and stabilize a terrified quantum child. Then get off this world before the destroyers of reality arrived. Just another day in her new life. The landing was tricky, even with Nova's quantum corridor protecting them. They found the other child in what had once been a city center, now transformed into a twisted landscape of impossible geometry. She appeared human, no more than 6 years old, curled into a ball at the heart of the chaos. Stay in the ship, Sarah ordered her small crew, the handful of trusted officers who had chosen to follow her on this impossible mission. Nova and I will handle this. The moment they stepped onto the twisted surface, reality itself seemed to react to Nova's presence. The chaos pulled back, creating a bubble of stability around them. Sarah had seen this before. The quantum children recognized each other, their powers resonating on frequencies beyond human understanding. The girl looked up as they approached, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. Like Nova, her skin rippled with patterns of light, though hers were wild and uncontrolled. "Hello, sister," Nova projected, its thoughts visible as complex mathematical formulas that hung in the air between them. "I'm like you. We're here to help." The girl's response was a burst of quantum energy that would have unmade an ordinary human. But Nova caught it, transformed it, turned it into a beautiful display of mathematical truth that danced around them like aurora borealis. "See," Nova continued, "you can create, not just destroy. Let me show you." What followed was something Sarah could only partially comprehend, a communion between two beings who could rewrite the laws of physics at will. Nova's patterns merged with the girl's chaotic ones, teaching, guiding, showing her how to control the infinite power at her disposal. Gradually, the chaos around them began to stabilize. The impossible geometry smoothed out, time resumed its normal flow, and gravity settled into a consistent pattern. The girl, who they would later name Aurora, stood up, her own patterns now matching the controlled complexity of Nova's. "Commander," Atlas's voice came urgently through Sarah's neural link. Multiple quantum ruptures detected at the system's edge. The Voidmakers are here. Sarah's blood ran cold. "Early, they're getting faster at tracking us." Nova and Aurora both looked up, their patterns shifting in response to the distant threat. "They sense us," Nova projected. "All of us, every child we awaken makes their hunt easier." But something was different this time. Aurora stepped forward, her newly controlled powers adding to Nova's in a way they hadn't seen before. The equations they generated together were more complex, more complete. "Commander," Atlas reported with what sounded like awe, "the quantum signatures are harmonizing. They're becoming something new." Sarah watched as the two children joined hands, their patterns merging into something that made her eyes water just to look at it. The master equation that Nova had glimpsed before was taking shape again, but this time it was more complete, more powerful. "The architect's plan," she whispered, understanding dawning. "Each child carries a piece of the solution. Together, we become what we were meant to be," Nova finished, its mental voice stronger than ever. "But we need the others. all of us, before they unmake everything. The Voidmaker's ships appeared in the sky above, their very presence causing reality to fray at the edges. But this time, Nova wasn't alone. Together with Aurora, they created a shield of pure mathematical truth that even the Unmakers couldn't pierce. "Atlas, get the ship ready," Sarah commanded. "We need to move fast. Find me the next quantum signature." As they rushed back to the Stellar Hawk, carrying their newest family member, Sarah's mind raced with implications. The Voidmakers were getting closer, faster, but so were they. Each child they found made them stronger, each piece of the equation bringing them closer to the ultimate truth. "How many more?" she asked Nova as they prepared for emergency launch. The child's response came in a complex series of calculations that resolved into a single number: 7. 7 more to complete the circle, to make the change that will save everything. 7 more children to find, 7 more pieces of the cosmic puzzle, and the Voidmakers getting closer with each passing moment. "Then we better move fast," Sarah said, settling into the command chair as Nova and Aurora took their positions, their combined powers already calculating the safest path through the chaos. "Atlas, set course for the nearest quantum disturbance. Maximum speed." The Stellar Hawk lifted off, carrying its expanded family of reality's children toward their next target. Behind them, the Voidmaker's ships gave chase, their weapons of entropy and chaos flaring against the shield of pure mathematical truth that the united children had created. The race to save reality itself had entered its final phase, and Sarah Chen was beginning to understand that her role as guardian was just the beginning of something far greater than she had ever imagined. The universe had chosen its champions, and together they would rewrite the very laws of existence, or watch it all fade into the void. The bridge of the Stellar Hawk had become a symphony of light and equations. 9 quantum children, each unique in their patterns, but harmonious in their purpose, worked in concert to keep the ship one step ahead of the encroaching void. Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, her command chair surrounded by mathematical proofs that would drive most humans mad. But she had grown accustomed to seeing reality's source code, just as she had grown accustomed to being mother to the universe's last hope. "Final quantum signature detected," Atlas reported. "But Commander, it's inside the Voidmaker's fleet." Nova, the first and still the strongest of the children, turned its silver eyes toward her. They knew it projected, the equation carrying undertones of urgency. "They found the last one first. They're using our sibling as bait." Through the viewport, Sarah could see the massive fleet of the Voidmakers, ships that seemed to be made of darkness itself, their very presence causing nearby stars to flicker and die. At their center, a quantum signature pulsed weakly, like a dying star. "Can you sense their condition?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer from the way Nova's patterns had turned dark with concern. "They're hurting her," Aurora added, her own patterns synchronizing with Nova's distress. "Using her power to enhance their unmaking. We have to help." The other children, each rescued from different corners of the galaxy, each now part of this impossible family, added their voices to the chorus. Their combined consciousness reached out toward their imprisoned sibling, and the equations they generated together told a story of pain and corruption. "Commander," Atlas interrupted, "the Voidmakers are hailing us." Sarah straightened in her chair. This was new. In all their encounters, the forces of entropy had never attempted communication. "Put them through." The hologram that appeared was unsettling, a being that seemed to be composed of living darkness, its form constantly shifting between states of existence and non-existence. "Guardian of the fragments," it spoke, its voice resonating on frequencies that made reality itself shiver. "You have gathered what was scattered, brought together what we sought to keep apart, and now you deliver them all to us." Sarah felt Nova's hand slip into hers, warm and real despite its quantum nature. "Why?" she asked the Voidmaker. "Why seek to unmake everything?" "Because existence itself is flawed," the being responded. "Each universe, each reality, carries the seeds of its own destruction. The heat death comes for all things. We seek to hasten the inevitable, to clear the way for something new. But that's where you're wrong, Nova projected, its thoughts now powerful enough to be heard by all. The architects didn't create us to fight you. They created us to show you another way. The children moved as one, their patterns merging into a single grand equation, the master theorem that they had been piecing together all along. Sarah watched in awe as reality itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what these impossible children would do next. Now, Sarah commanded, and everything happened at once. The children's combined power reached out across space, not attacking the Voidmaker's fleet but embracing it. The Master Theorem wasn't a weapon, it was a proof, a demonstration of a fundamental truth that the Voidmakers have forgotten. Commander, Atlas reported, its artificial voice filled with wonder. They're rewriting the laws of entropy itself. The space around them transformed. Where the Voidmakers sought to unmake reality, the children showed them how to remake it. Stars that had been dying flared back to life, but differently, they burned without consuming themselves, existed without decay. This is what the architects knew. Nova projected, its consciousness now joined with its siblings in a singular purpose. Entropy isn't the enemy, it's part of the cycle. We don't need to unmake reality to save it. We just need to help it evolve. The imprisoned child at the center of the Voidmaker's fleet began to respond, its own patterns awakening to join the symphony of creation. The dark ships around it started to change, their weapons of entropy transforming into tools of renewal. Sarah watched as the Voidmakers themselves began to understand. Their dark forms shifted, patterns of light appearing within their entropy as they witnessed the truth that the children had been created to share. The heat death, the Voidmaker spoke again, its voice now carrying notes of comprehension. It's not the end, it's a transformation. Yes, Nova confirmed, as reality itself seemed to sing around them. Everything that exists can be renewed, reborn, remade. Not through destruction, but through understanding. This is what we were meant to teach you. The final pieces of the Master Theorem fell into place, and Sarah saw the full scope of the architect's plan. The quantum children weren't weapons or tools. They were teachers, sent to show both humanity and the Voidmakers that existence itself could evolve beyond the constraints of entropy. The transformation spread outward like ripples in the cosmic pond. Stars burned brighter but sustainably, planets pulsed with new forms of life that existed in harmony with the quantum fabric of reality, and space itself seemed more vibrant, more alive. Atlas, Sarah called out, "What are you seeing?" "Everything, Commander. They're not just changing our universe. The effects are cascading across all realities, all dimensions. The heat death, it's being rewritten. Existence itself is learning to renew itself." The Voidmaker's fleet had completely transformed, their ships now shining with the same patterns that danced across the children's skin. Their purpose had shifted from unmaking to remaking, from destruction to renewal. Nova turned to Sarah, its silver eyes filled with both joy and sadness. "It's time," it projected softly. "We have to go." Sarah felt her heart clench. Go where?" "To teach," Aurora explained, taking her other hand. "There are more universes, more realities that need to learn. But you've given us something the architects never planned for. You've taught us love." The other children gathered around, their patterns forming a tapestry of gratitude and affection. The Voidmakers, now transformed into allies, waited patiently for their new teachers. "You showed us that the power to remake reality means nothing without the heart to guide it," Nova projected. "You were never just our guardian, Sarah Chen. You were our first student and our greatest teacher." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she hugged each child in turn, knowing that this was both an ending and a beginning. They had saved reality itself, not through war or destruction, but through understanding and love. "Atlas," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "Log final entry for Project Guardian. Mission accomplished. Reality itself has evolved." The children prepared to depart, their forms beginning to transcend the physical realm. But Nova paused, turning back to the woman who had found it in that derelict ship so long ago. "We'll come back," it promised, projecting one last equation that spoke of infinite possibilities and eternal love. "There are still so many wonders to show you." Sarah Chen watched as her impossible family departed with their former enemies, spreading across the cosmos to teach other realities what they had learned. The Stellar Hawk's viewport filled with their light, a reminder that in the end, existence itself was an act of creation, perpetually renewed by understanding and love. She had been chosen to guard reality's children, but they had given her something far greater, the chance to be part of reality's evolution, and the promise that even in an infinite cosmos, love was the most powerful force of all. The stars burned brighter now, eternal and renewed, as Sarah Chen set course for home, carrying within her heart the legacy of two worlds, the human drive to protect and nurture, and the cosmic dance of endless possibility. The story of the quantum children would be told across all realities, but at its heart, it would always be a tale of how one human's love helped save existence itself. And somewhere in the quantum phone between universes, 9 children of reality continued their work, carrying with them the most important equation of all, the mathematical proof of a mother's love.